My God, leave Leonardo DiCaprio alone. I'm sick of his face. Welcome to Groovy Movies. My name is Lily Austin.
And my name's James Brailsford. Hello.
Hello, and welcome to our post-Oscars episode. Cards on the table. We had to take a gamble with what we'd be talking about the week after the Oscars. And we were I feel like back when we first were planning this season, we were really putting our money on The Brutalist. So we're going to be talking about the Oscars, and then we're going to be talking about The Brutalist. As it happens, it did not win Best Picture, and Anora won, which we also loved, and we're talking about that next week. So that's already been recorded. I'm putting it out there now. There'll be no acknowledgement of its win at the Oscars, but we're going to talk about it right now. James, what do you make of Anora winning Best Picture?
Oh, I mean, I had Anora down as Best Picture for me because of all the ones I've seen, I've not seen everything, but I've seen most of the Best Picture noms. So for me, it was Best Picture, Best Director I had down as Sean Baker, Best Actress I had as Mikey Madison. I just thought it's an interesting one because there's lots of reportage around the fact that it's a relatively obscure film. It's not a mainstream film. It may be a big film to us, but it's certainly not a blockbuster. I mean, just because blockbusters have changed anyway, but 20, 30 years ago, this probably could have had a much bigger audience. But it's interesting they're saying that the Oscar that won the Best Picture, probably the majority of the audience will not have seen that film.
But did you think it was going to win? I know in terms of your own choice, okay, you thought it would win?
Yeah, I just think it kind of, it did two things. I think it hit the thing that Oscars like. They like something that's got a bit of meat to it, but essentially it's a big entertaining film, right? You know, so it's got entertainment written all over it, but also it's got a bit more to it. It's dealing with things that are kind of current at the moment, like kind of, I guess, investigating the world of sex workers in a way that's non-judgmental about it. So I think for Hollywood, it's kind of combining two things at the moment. So I just felt like it was in the air that it was the perfect film to win this year.
See, I mean, it was definitely in the air to win, but I'm really surprised it won. I think if it wasn't for the controversy around The Brutalist and AI, I don't think it would have won. The Brutalist, to me, is an Oscar film. I'm not talking about like on a personal level. I absolutely loved Anora, and I'm really happy that it won. But in terms of what the Oscars usually favor, which is not usually a film, rarely is my favorite film of the year, but I'm just shook that that Anora's won and swept so many of the categories, because I think it's purely because in a year where there's been so much controversy around the films that had been the front runners, this was like the least controversial, though also had its controversies, as we'll discuss next week.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into more when we actually get talking about The Brutalist. But I was watching The Brutalist, and I just remember thinking that it's not going to win. It's not going to win Best Picture. I could just, again, we'll get into it when we discuss it. But yeah, Anora just felt like it was its time. It was the right film, right time for where Hollywood is.
Really? Okay, we'll need to discuss this more, I guess, as we go on to The Brutalist. I'm surprised by that, but okay.
Now, you see, the thing is, I took your brief last night of, make my predictions for the Oscars, so I made them for pretty much every category I could find.
Yeah, whereas mine was literally just, I think The Brutalist will win. And I'm glad well, no, I'm not. I'm actually not glad I was wrong because I actually loved The Brutalist, and I think it deserved to win that more than what it did win for, which was Adrian Brody winning his second Oscar. I love him as an actor, but I mean, it's all bullshit and subjective, but I don't think anyone should be winning an Oscar two times over. When when Paul Ray Fiennes is being, look, but Edith Head is Edith Head. Come on, but like Ray Fiennes being overlooked is sad. I'm sad for him.
Yeah, I get it. I didn't have Adrian Brody pegged.
Really? Oh, that one. I was like 100%.
I had Timothée Chalamet just because I haven't seen the film, but there's been a lot of buzz around him. So that was more just
no. He's a newbie. It's a shock that okay, this I will say.
But listen. What I want to get round to bragging about the other categories that I did manage to get right.
Okay, go on.
Best screenplay adapted, Conclave. I predicted that one, which I was quite happy about. Totally got it wrong with the original screenplay. I had the substance down. I thought it was possibly going to win for the most original
But
screenplay,
Anora
but
won that
Anora
one
won.
again, right? Yeah.
Yep. Sound, Dune Part 2, had that one. Now, production design had Dune, I thought, but it went to Wicked.
Who also got costume design as well. Paul Tazwell, he's a very worthy winner for Wicked. So he did a good job on that.
But the category that I'm glad I'm happy that is that I managed to get correct was editing. Best editing went to Anora, which out of all the films I'd seen, I thought Anora should get that one.
Interesting. I think so as well. It's just funny because it means that basically Sean Baker won the Oscars this year because he wrote, he directed, he edited, he produced. So he won.
Yeah, not
and they won 5 awards.
That's like his ego. I mean, he seems like a very kind of modest, humble guy, but gee whiz, that's going to get anybody's ego pumped, isn't it?
I know. I can't wait to see what he does next because it's that tricky second album syndrome. But I will be interested to see where he goes after that if he's got anything in the works already.
He will do, I'm sure.
But also, Mikey Madsen winning Best Actor. I was sad about that because it would have been great to see Demi Moore having got on my soapbox when we talked about The Substance to talk about how this wasn't her comeback and she's a fantastic actor and finally she's being appreciated. It's a little sad that that story didn't get the ending we all wanted, but to be honest, she probably sealed her own fate when she said and when she got the Golden Globe that this is the first award I ever won and I've always been told I was just a popcorn actor. I feel like that got people's backs up. And I think similarly with The Brutalist, I think the fact, we will get into it a little bit more, but I think the fact that Brady Corbett has spoken so much about how hard it is to make films on a financial level, how he's not made any money from his films, how difficult it is, I feel like Hollywood doesn't like that. They like the smoke and mirrors. They want to pretend like it's all glamour and opulence. And his honesty, I think, probably didn't serve him that well either.
Right. Okay. I mean, like I have to say, I thought Demi Moore would get Best Actress until I saw Anora, and then I just thought I think Demi Moore's performance in The Substance is iconic. I think Anora is a much more nuanced performance as far as the character itself and what Mikey Madsen did with the role. I think that was my take on it. Anyway.
I mean, it's very hard to kind of compare, I think, and it's horrible, really, to compare.
Well, I have done. I'm an awful person.
I mean, that's what we're doing and what we love to do, and
yeah.
It's interesting because as we talk about all the time, the film industry is in a bad way. But the Oscars continue to be important, and that's the thing. Even though awards are kind of ridiculous and it's all subjective, and and kind of silly to try and pit films against each other, what it is an amazing platform for film. And like you said, Anora is a small film. The Brutalist. Who would see this film? A 3.5-hour film. And it's
apparently
huge.
not many of the Academy members. That's who would see the film.
Yeah, which I think is a huge part of it. I mean, it's ridiculous, but it makes me annoyed. But it's amazing to give these film more of a spotlight. I'm Still Here. Have you seen I'm Still Here?
No.
Oh my gosh, you have to go see it. It's such a fantastic film. That won Best International Feature Film, and it's incredible movie. But there's no way I would have seen that movie if it hadn't got this Oscar buzz around it. So it's an amazing platform. And I think it is exciting that so many films from lots of different genres are being shown. I think this is an interesting year for film. And the fact that I'm surprised that Anora would win. I know, James, you had the sight, but I think it's great that there aren't classic Oscar movies, because there was a long time, I think, a big part of the Harvey Weinstein chokehold on the awards season and his Miramax's impact on the industry was that we got a lot of the same kind of boring films coming through about the royal family or whatever every time winning Oscars, and it's not like that now. There's a lot more variety and it's exciting, so I think it's a happy ending.
Yeah, I thought Conclave was a much more traditional Oscar winner type film, but also it's a good film. It's there's certainly more to it than other Oscar winning films of the past, but
Yeah.
it's the kind of like it's something you could watch with your grandma and not upset her. She'll have a good time. It's just Sunday afternoon, but it's Sunday afternoon with a bit of an edge.
And that's the thing. That's why I'm very surprised that Anora won, because it is not that film. You cannot watch that with grandma on a Sunday afternoon. At least certainly not my grandma. You couldn't have. So it's kind of amazing that it won, and it's fantastic. It's great. I think it's just because we're going to talk about The Brutalist. So I've been deep in my research about this film, and oh my god, the what went into this movie, which is crazy because I keep saying Anora is my favorite film last year, so it's actually incredible that it won. But I'm just like, I feel a little bit I feel a little bit sad for The Brutalist.
For sure, I agree with you. Like, because I went to see it, I just saw it this weekend, which is about a full month after it was released. Just because there was a place in the north of England, in good old Barnsley, that was showing the 70mm film print of it, and it was the only place I think outside of London, and I think Glasgow have got it. And there's just the one print, by the way, the 70mm print, making its way around the UK. So it started off it came from Ireland, went to the BFI in London, and then it's come up to I think it's gone to Barnsley, then it's going to Glasgow. So it's just one print making its way around these select cinemas that can still play 70mm.
Yes. So let's talk about that. So finally you've seen it, and you saw it the way Brady Corbett wanted you to see it. And,
correct.
We've been talking about seeing this movie ever since it was announced months ago. So how was it? What did you think?
Well, I loved the experience, right? Just shout out to the Parkway Barnsley, incredible cinema. It's owned and operated by the projectionist. He's a film aficionado, as in film celluloid projection. So it's due to his passion for it that there is a 35mm projector, a 70mm projector. He hand built lots of parts for it to make it all work, And to get a print, right? He got a first run Oppenheimer print. Just to say what a first run print is, it's like you get the print for the premiere day, right? If you're a provincial cinema, you get the second run print, which means it's been in the cinemas for 3 to 6 months, and the print that you get is shot to shit because the more times it goes through the projector, the more scratched it gets. Anyway, he managed to get a day of release print of Oppenheimer because of his connections that he's got in the industry.
Incredible. I want to go. That's amazing.
So every film is a £5. The Brutalist was £9, but apart from that, every film is a £5.
Oh my god. Insane, incredible.
And they have projection booth tours. So I got there 15 minutes before the show, 6 o'clock the curtain, and I got a 15-minute personal tour of the booth, got shown around. You go in, there's a curtain that closes across the screen, so there's a curtain that opens as the film starts, everything. At the intermission, they even had somebody come down selling ice creams at the front of the cinema, just like they used to do when I was a kid.
Oh my god.
It was incredible.
Oh my god, James, I wish I'd gone with you. This is amazing.
So it was... Overall experience 10/10. But
that's the thing. That's why I was like, oh my god, because like the butt that I could feel coming. So what's your problem?
Brady, I saw it how you wanted me to see it, mate. I did, right? But you and me both know that it was a digital scan out to the 70mm print. It wasn't the pure photochemical, what I go for a 70mm print for. It had been via a computer and back out. So wasn't really worth seeing on 70mm.
Oh, interesting.
Because it's already been scanned. So essentially, it's taken the film, scanned it, and then come back out. When we went to see Oppenheimer at the BFI, that hadn't happened. We just saw a print from the negative, so we got that full film experience.
So how can you tell? How did you know?
Because I'm just a bloody nerd. Because I've just seen a lot of 70mm, seen a lot of 35mm. You can tell, basically. There's a certain look, and I was gutted because I could overhear a bunch of people say, it's my first time seeing 70mm. Oh, I can't wait to see what it's like. And it looked great. Don't get me wrong. It was probably the best way to see the film because 70mm film is still a very good format, It's better than seeing it at 95% of cinemas in the UK would be to see the 70mm print, but it wasn't like a real 70mm. I think most people watching it would think, well, it looked okay, looked fine, but I don't think you get that, oh, wow. The wow factor wasn't quite there as far as the presentation, but that's just me being a nerd. And
I've seen it twice.
Oh wow, where have you seen them?
So we talked about you let me know that, oh my gosh, this is the way to see it, 70mm print, go see it this way.
Yeah.
And I considered it, but being in London, I was not going to be able to see it for £9. And I just thought, you know what? I've done a lot of investing in seeing films in the format they're intended. And right now, I just want to get it the cheapest I can get it. So I went to see it.
Okay, Lily.
Yeah, so I went to see it at the Genesis in Whitechapel for a £5. And I thought it looked beautiful. I had a great time seeing it. I was super happy. And then I went to see it again last week because it was on Mubi. So I could, with Mubi Go, I could see it for free. So I thought, why not? I'll go again. And this time I went to see it at the Barbican, which felt fantastic because obviously the Barbican is one of the most famous Brutalist buildings. And it's a film, as the title suggests, about Brutalist architecture. So there was something very, very pleasing about seeing it in that way.
Nice.
And look, the film looks amazing, and I'm loving to. I love to hear that I didn't miss anything really in terms of the. I mean, obviously, like format wise, okay, but I think the film looks amazing.
It does. It does look amazing, yeah. Especially considering, as we're going to get into, the fact that it's a very low budget film. Really, it doesn't look or feel like it had a $10 million budget. It's all on screen, and I'd say it was a film that I admired it more than I liked the film. I really admired so much about it. I mean, the ambition to do something on that scale and the amount of effort it took on every department to pull that off. I was just, blown away by it.
Okay. Oh gosh, I'm hearing such reticence. And I feel like you were so excited, like when we first heard about this movie. So we should get into it. So just to give the old log line, this movie is about a Hungarian architect and a Holocaust survivor who, shortly after the war, is beginning a new life in America. His wife is back in Hungary, and there's this kind of hope that they'll be reunited. But for the first kind of 2/3 of the film, I would say, it's with him, and then she kind of comes in. Well, it's the second half of the film. The film's, as we mentioned, it's 3.5 hours long. 2 parts with an intermission, and it's after the intermission that he is reunited. So that's Adrian Brody and Felicity Jones, and that's where we start with Laszlo Toth, Adrian Brody's character Laszlo Toth, this architect. And it's interesting, right? Because the film it's presented like it's a biopic. We meet Laszlo Toth as he's getting off the boat to America and seeing the Statue of Liberty. So there's this real American dream spirit to it. But quite quickly there's a sort of sexual and like kind of seediness to some of what happens in the film right from the get-go, which kind of suggests that this isn't going to be like, it's got a bit more bite to it maybe than you might anticipate from like the straight up American dream movie. But we follow him as we learn that he is actually this like star architect from back in Hungary, and he is given this amazing opportunity to build a community center in a village in Pennsylvania.
I'd like to hear your thoughts about it, because I've had a bit of an existential moment about this film ever since I watched it on Sunday. So I just want to hear your thoughts, your take on it, really, because I can't unpick my thoughts about it with, I think my taste in film have changed, and I'm not sure I like it. So talk me through your impressions of the film.
Okay. I think that it really benefited from a second viewing. I think I liked it.
I'm wondering that.
Yeah, I liked it a lot more the second time. I really did like it the first time, but I do feel like I'm not convinced it needed to be 3.5 hours. Like, it's interesting. We're gonna, in a later episode, we're gonna talk about In the Mood for Love, which is a film where lots of material was shot and there was no script, and the film was found through the filming. But in contrast with this film, Brady Corbett and his wife, Mona Fastfold, they wrote the script together. They write all their scripts together. So they're both directors and writers, and they partner with each other. Brady Corbett made Vox Lux a few years ago. You might have seen that film, and which I absolutely love. I love that film, and it's a real.
I've not seen either of his previous films, but I really want to see them now. After seeing The Brutalist and just watching interviews with him, I'm probably this afternoon I want to watch Vox Lux, actually.
Yeah, I mean,
He said, especially saying it's a film with no second act, which is fascinating.
Yes. It's exactly that. That's what I really admire about Brady Corbett. Okay, we're going a bit all over the place, but I'm going to roll with it. So Brady Corbett, you might recognize his face because he was an actor first. He's kind of an indie darling. Like he starred in 13, Mysterious Skin, Funny Games, the Michael Haneke film.
But he was also a Tracy brother in the Thunderbirds film.
Yeah, exactly. That's true.
He was a Thunderbird.
But it's so he had and was an actor from when he was a child. So he's always been in the industry. And yeah, with Vox Lux, it's a controversial film. Some people really hate it, but for me, I love it. And it has this interesting thing of, again, it's a film split into two. But yes, there's this act in the middle that's missing. So we're with a child who becomes a child star. I won't go into too much, but like a pop star. And then we fast forward to when she's a grown up and has already had the peak of her career and is kind of falling apart a bit. And yeah, so Brady Corbett and his partner Mona, they wrote this script together, and I read that he said they filmed every single part of the script.
Yes.
Like the script exactly as they wrote it is on screen. And because of that, it was so kind of well thought out that it was impossible to cut anything and to make it shorter, which I can so understand, but I do feel that it loses a bit of momentum in the second half, and there would have been a way to just basically rewrite the story to change that a bit to keep the kind of energy of it going. And I also think that the film, what I thought is this is a bit of a wanky, if I was writing an article kind of take, but I'm going to go with it. I feel like the film is like the building that he is building in the movie, because it's very impressive. It makes a big impression and kind of spectacular, and you want to look at it, but it has a kind of emptiness to it slightly. There are these really emotionally charged dramatic moments in the film, but there's not a lot of lingering on them. There's kind of this harsh, kind of dispassionate view on it, which works really well in Vox Lux. But I think that because we don't sit with the emotion for very long and then we're moving on, I felt like I wasn't fully in there with these characters. And it also feels a bit claustrophobic, just like this building that he built. So I wasn't completely there with it. It's not like Anora where I'm with Anora the whole way through. I'm emotionally going with her and completely, But I thought it was an incredible feat.
That was my feeling, actually. That was probably the issue that I was having the most with, which is because normally I'm dragged along by the spectacle of things. Normally you give me some nice spectacle and I'll be a happy camper. But I was finding that I really couldn't get in with the characters. I found them, and again, we could say that's possibly the point, but just to have a film where I just couldn't feel like I was really rooting for a character, I just found that kind of distanced me a little bit. But but the claustrophobia, by the way, some other interviews have picked up on that, and I think that the reason for the claustrophobia is because they didn't have a big budget, so they couldn't make many wide shots that often. So a lot of times we're in close-up shots. It's very rare that we see a big wide to show off a period street, something like that. I think that's almost by design, just to kind of make it manageable for them. I thought what they did to pull off the period with little money was incredible.
Yeah, I agree. But actually, yeah, you're right. Because a big thing that I found difficult with it was that this is a film all about, the focus of this movie is on Adrian Brody's character trying to build this building, but we don't actually see much of the building. Most of what we see is of a model of it. And then when the building actually starts being made, it feels very incomplete, that we're not getting a lot of time in the building. There's only really one scene where they go into it properly, and that's right at the end, and it's dark, and it's following Guy Pearce's character Harrison Lee Van Buren as he's running through, and you don't get this real sense of it. And I kind of thought, oh well, there's probably maybe that's a metaphor for something. Thinking about it now, it probably was just a budget issue,
Budget, yeah. And I think they were incredibly inventive to make something that had an epic feel with a tiny amount of money. But I think that's what they were running up against. Exactly, was that they just couldn't afford. They couldn't show those on screen. I admired the fact that they didn't over rely on CGI. Like there were a couple of composite shots. That sequence at the end, like you say, when they finally go into the building, that was a little bit of a composite I could see. But mostly it's all practical. It's all in front of the camera because they've chosen good locations, good settings. But
Yeah.
I just as well. See, I'm glad that you said it was better on a second viewing because that's what I've been thinking. I think I need to give it a second viewing because I don't like myself. Because I think where I was as a filmmaker 20 years ago, I would have absolutely unequivocally loved and championed this film after seeing it. Whereas now I'm just a bit more hesitant, and I don't know if I'm right now or if I was right then. But
Darling, you're both right. You're both right in both forms. I think there's something.
I just don't. But Lily, it's bothering me. I don't want to be like this about the film. It does all the things I look for in a film, and I wanted to love it more.
But I think there is something slightly, emotionally not quite clicking with it.
And I found Adrian Brody's Laszlo Toth, I found him very one note. I just felt like I didn't get to know the character. He didn't seem like he changed much. I don't know.
Well, that was why I don't really think that. Like, people have been joking about the fact that if Adrian Brody won the Oscar, it'd be winning for the same part again, because Laszlo Toth is kind of a similar character to the character he played in The Pianist. And I mean, look, I appreciated his character. I think that Brady Corbett does complex, not very likable characters quite well. That's obviously what he likes doing, he's interested in, and that's certainly in the case of Laszlo Toth and Felicity Jones' character Elizabeth Toth. They're both not particularly likable, and like I like that because it's difficult if you're doing a film about Holocaust survivors making a new life in the US. You don't want to fall into some kind of trope of the grateful immigrant,
Yeah, I guess.
There's something in that, I suppose. And I mean, look, the change that he had was, I think he kind of has a mental breakdown as it goes on, because, talk about this film as being it's kind of an analogy for filmmaking itself, right? So architecture and filmmaking, to do both things, you have to have a big idea, and then you have to bring in a lot of people to do it with you, to bring your idea to fruition, and you need a lot of money. And it's very easy. It takes a long time, and it's easy for it to kind of lose its way. And that's very much the story in this film. Just in terms of the architecture and the feat of building this thing, it's complicated. And you see how Laszlo Toth kind of is basically having a breakdown as the film goes on and becomes more and more difficult.
Which I imagine Brady Corbett, looking at the production history of the film, I imagine Brady Corbett is Laszlo Toth to some degree. I mean, 7 years of trying to get the film off the ground and false starts and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, him and his partner have talked about how they are both at different points. They're Laszlo or Elizabeth. They both take on the role of being the artist creator, and the other one is having to support them even when it's very difficult in their work. And I kind of appreciated that as a metaphor. And also, Guy Pearce's character, the patron of this, Harrison Lee Van Buren, that feels like a very real and alive issue in Hollywood of the kind of uneasy relationship between the patron and the artist. So I really appreciated all that in the film. And I think that going into a second viewing, knowing that it's about that, I kind of got more out of those elements of it.
Yeah, like I say, you're convincing me that I think a second viewing is on my cards, even though I wasn't. I've got to pick my moment for another 3.25 hours of The Brutalist. But
I know, but the intermission really makes it okay, as long as you know that you're going to have a drink in your intermission, and it gives you.
I love an intermission. Please bring them back. I think every film over 2 hours absolutely should have an intermission. It's just nice to have a breather and just kind of get back in the zone. And, and it was well placed, the intermission. There was a bit of a hook, things were being changed up.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I think let's talk about the production, because I think you're right. There's definitely parallels to be drawn between the character of Laszlo Toth and Brady Corbett, because it was a difficult process, right, producing this film.
Yeah, apparently the first attempt at filming it or getting off the ground was 2020. And, you know, I was watching the credits because as well, there's notes for the projectionist for every version of the film print being shown of when to close the curtains at the cinema. So even the opening and closing the curtains have got like a director's note of when you meant to do it. So anyway, I was watching the credits go up and I noticed there was a special thanks to Joel Egerton. And I was like, okay, there's a story. And immediately I just thought he must have been in the frame. That's why, and he's got a thank you for being probably decent about stepping aside or something. I don't know. But then doing our research, and yeah, there he was. He was originally cast alongside, I've forgotten who was alongside.
Oh, it's an amazing original cast, which I find kind of crazy. Originally, it was going to be Joel Egerton and Marion Cotillard in the lead characters, and Mark Rylance playing Guy Pearce's character. It's very different cast. Like, I can't really imagine anyone but Adrian Brody playing it, given that he has Hungarian family in his background. You know, the story he said is very similar to his mother's story as an immigrant coming to the US.
I can't imagine Joel Edgerton just seems a bit too much of an American face, even though I think he's an Australian actor.
Yeah, but I guess because they did the casting probably in 2019, right?
It was meant to start in 2019, and of course it got shut down because of COVID. And then apparently certain deaths and situations with members of cast and crew just kept pushing the date back. So I guess at some point your cast have got to move on to other projects. But yeah, you're right. It would have been a different film, different cast. Great cast, but I think the casting they got for this film was equally as good. You know, in fact, probably a bit more suited. Another thing that I noticed, there's a conversation between Sean Baker and Brady Corbett, is that just making films in LA is so expensive, you know. Brady Corbett said that when he made Vox Lux, it was a New York production, and he said it broke his heart to see so much of his budget eaten up with things that don't go on screen, so permits, you know. The cost of things are just much higher, and that really speaks to me as a filmmaker. When I've made my productions, I love putting every penny on screen, and so by going to Budapest to shoot this film, he said that very much so everything ended up on screen. That $10 million went a long way in Budapest, I think.
Yeah, they started filming in Budapest and then moved to Tuscany to finish filming a month later. So yeah, I mean, I feel like you can kind of tell. I mean, you wouldn't be able to know for sure, but it makes sense watching the film. Like, it sort of feels kind of surreal and out of time in a way that I think works because it's a period film, but it definitely doesn't have that clearly US like feel to it.
It totally works. But I like that because that adds to the grittiness. Everything just feels a little bit darker and grittier than perhaps it would have done if it had been shot in the US. And I like that because that works perfectly for the period. It helps kind of put you in there a little bit better, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And Brady Corbett has said that he thinks that films are as close as we can get to dreams, and he wanted that dreamlike quality to come through in the film. And I think definitely in the scene in Italy, but in other moments too, there is this kind of dreamlike quality to it.
Oh, do you mean in the quarry, in the white?
Yeah.
Oh my
I think
God!
it's called Carrera. Stunning. But also in the scene with the heroin use, there are these various moments when it does feel very dreamlike, and there's always almost a surrealism to the way it's filmed. And I think part of that is the fact that we don't have these clear visual markers of it being the US, even though it is, you know, clearly set there.
Yeah, it's a US of the mind. And
Exactly.
One thing that I really appreciate as well about how it was directed was actually something that Brady Corbett said was also a byproduct of them deciding to shoot on not just film but on VistaVision film, which uses up double the amount of film stock. So it's burning through your available stock much faster. Is that he couldn't afford to shoot traditional coverage. Now, I'm not a fan of traditional coverage, which I mean, when you have two people talking, traditionally you get a wide shot of the whole scene, you get a mid shot, perhaps from the bottom of the stomach to the top of the head, then you get a close-up of every actor, so you just keep rerunning the scene, and then you cut it all together, and you can decide which shot you're using at what point. And that's how a lot of standard Hollywood fare is shot, but I also find it slightly unimaginative. But the directors were slightly more interesting, like Paul Thomas Anderson, if it comes straight to mind. they do a thing called blocking, which is you don't cut the camera as much. You don't even shoot that coverage. You actually stage a scene and you get your actors to move around. You move the camera to get your different shot sizes. And because they didn't have the time or the money to be able to do all traditional coverage, it meant that many of the shots, when you watch The Brutalist, it's made up of sustained takes, and then we might cut to a completely different scene. But that to me is very cinematic, and it helps give the film a feeling of being an epic film, of being an important film, because it's not just doing traditional, almost soap opera coverage.
Yeah, I was very interested to read that apparently the insurance companies, when Brady Corbett first approached them for funding, they refused to insure the production because the script was so long. And, he talked about the fact that, okay, it seems very long because I have a lot of long scenes with lots of dialogue. But yeah, as you said, because I don't shoot in that way with all the coverage, etc. So just because the scene is very long with a lot of dialogue doesn't mean it's going to take longer to shoot and I need more time. So what he did was just shrunk the margins so that there were fewer pages.
I love that.
And then he got it approved. He didn't cut any of the actual script.
That's not what I did with my essays at university. I did the opposite. I made the margins bigger so it filled up more pages. Yeah, I was like, Brady, I love that. Love that hustle. That's filmmaking hustling. That's how you make a film, I mean, I love as well that it hasn't set the box office on fire, but it's more than made its money back because they didn't make it for too much money. So it should be setting him up good for his next film. But yeah.
Yeah. It was 10 million budget with a box office 36 million. So yeah, should have done fine.
But both him and Sean Baker are talking about, though, to make the films they like to make now, there's not a big $100 million box office audience for them. So they're saying, Sean Baker especially said he doesn't know how much longer he can keep making films at this tiny budget where everybody's having to basically, work, not for free, but for a tiny amount of money, because essentially the audiences aren't as big for this kind of stuff as they used to be, and there's no DVD sales anymore. So it's an interesting time, but they're making it work, but it does sound at the cost of it's all consuming.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a way to work or to live, the way Brady Corbett has spoken about just not making any money from this film so far, and having to take time out to promote this movie. You take out months of 6 months to do the awards season cycle. And of course you're not working then, you're not earning anything. Okay, your flights are covered, etc. But it takes a lot to do that, and it just seems like a really impossible way to work and create. And on the one hand, I think we've talked about it, having less money can be a benefit and that can make you more creative, but I think there's a balance, and the way they've had to go crazy trying to make this film happen, I don't actually think that's the best for creativity.
Well, and also let's just use my favourite touchstone is Christopher Nolan's career. His first film was a £6,000 film. Beg, borrow, steal. It's all friends and favours. Next film, it was $2 million. So suddenly he was making his first film with a budget, and then very quickly his next film was $60 million. So by his third film, he was getting into the air of that people were getting paid properly. It was all going on screen. It just doesn't seem that route exists as easily as it once did, I think. Which is a shame, because I don't know where they're going to go next, because I don't want Brady Corbett and Sean Baker to sell out just to make a Marvel film. I don't think they would ever do that either. But
No
I wonder
way.
I also don't want them to go to Netflix and streaming, because they are proper filmmakers and they're passionate. But what's happening is they can't afford to live,
Yeah, exactly. It's difficult. And yeah, on the subject of the small budget movie, that I mentioned it before, but I mean, the film's been marred by controversy because the editor of the film gave an interview where he talked about the fact that they had used some AI technology to enhance Adrian Brody and Felicity Jones's accents so they sound more Hungarian, basically. So to the Hungarian ear, you wouldn't be able to tell that they weren't actually Hungarian.
Yeah, this was causing a ripple around the film school with the students, because all the film school students, they do not like generative AI or AI at all. It's and to me, I'm quite surprised. I think if I was a young filmmaker, I would be at least using it as a tool somewhere, but it's just blanket, not being used. Anyway, so it was a big deal, the fact that this statement had come out. So I looked into it in more detail, and the nitty gritty of it is what happened was, because there are some small sections of voiceover where it's spoken in Hungarian by the two main characters. And yes, when it was delivered, it wasn't, if you were Hungarian, you'd know it wasn't correct Hungarian. So what they did was they got both the actors to give them voice samples like we've done for our Descript back in the day, but they got both actors to give samples of their voices that were then put into an AI that recreated the Hungarian of the entire text, but they didn't use that. They just cut out the vowels, which it was apparently it's the vowels of Hungarian that English speakers have problems with. So they just cut in little bits of vowels into the original performance. So they included the actors in the entire process. It's based on their voices, and it didn't replace whole words. It was just vowels here and there as needed. So for me, that's where you use AI as a tool just to make your film a little bit better, you know, especially when you got 10 million, you're just trying to make it as good as possible. It's like, give these guys a break. And then the other thing was generative AI used for some of the architectural drawings. Same situation. You got $10 million. You can't afford to have an architectural draftsman come and draft out some really good looking pictures. So what they did, they got generative AI to create some. Then they got the art department to trace over them so they looked like hand drawn. And again, they're featured. It's the very end of the film, based where they pop up. Like, you know, it's not the entire film. It's a small detail that's just helping them on a low budget kind of get the film made. To me, I feel like that's the appropriate use of a tool for filmmakers.
I agree. I think it's, you know, I understand that the industry is terrified about what AI might mean for jobs,
Yeah.
but I think realistically, what we need to be scared about is the financial state of the industry, and what has happened with streaming services and the changes to the business. Like, I think it's down to the financial structure and how the business operates, and this push for big films rather than tiny indie films using the technology that's out there to make their film better on a small budget. Like, I think that is like focusing our energies in the wrong direction. Like, there's a lot to be concerned about with AI, absolutely, but I really think that the reality is the technology is where it is, so we can't pretend like it's not and it's not being used. Let's be real, we're all using AI nowadays, so rather than Google or whatever, and it just seemed to me like the wrong place to put your discontent to AI is to with
I did.
Brady Corbett.
I felt very defensive of the Brutalist. They're a scrappy, low budget, like they're hustling everything they can to make it look like it's a proper old-fashioned Hollywood epic.
Absolutely. Before I read that it was made for 10 million, I never would have guessed that it was such a small budget film. I feel like a lot of people getting upset about that don't realize that and think that this is a big blockbuster.
Yeah, absolutely. And also when you look at the details, the fact that the actors were involved in the process, they weren't just like, hey, we're just going to use a robot to replace you. No. It was part of the whole process. And if you think of it more as a visual effects tool, think of it as a visual effects tool. You wouldn't just shoot every film with visual effects. You use them appropriately as and when. So
yeah. Okay. Well, we're on the same side with that, James, and I appreciate that. Okay. So will you watch it again, do you think?
I think I will. I think I will, actually, because I owe it to, because again, somebody at the film school whose opinion I really respect, he loved it, and I am just I think I deserve to give it I think the film deserves a proper secondary evaluation. So yes, just maybe I gotta have a week before I go and see it, just a bit of time.
Yeah, I think give it a minute for sure. Look, I don't think it's a perfect film at all, but I think that I love the ambition of it, and that it's trying to do something different. And I really love that about Brady Corbett. He's not your average filmmaker, and not that any filmmaker is average, can I just say. It's an amazing feat to make films, but he's doing something, he's really trying to do things differently, and I really love that. And I will say that I absolutely loved the start of the film. The first 10 minutes with that score, and that, like, I was like, oh my God, here I go. Shot. This is incredible. And when I watched it second time, I was like, oh my God, yes, I remember this now. This is amazing.
Yeah, that was an awesome opening sequence.
And as we mentioned, the scenes in Italy in the mine are just spectacular, though it gets pretty dark. There are various moments that are incredible and like the work of a really, really talented filmmaker. So I look forward to seeing what he does next, and maybe working on it all hanging together a bit better. Though apparently he's making a horror film, so I'm very interested to see what that will be.
Yes, a 1970s Western horror, which sounds great. And he's shooting that on a very strange, another obscure film format. So obviously the nerd in me is very excited about that. By the way, little quick mention, it won the Best Oscar for Cinematography. Very well deserved. Lol Crawley, excellent job. And just a quick nerdy thing, they shot on VistaVision. Why did they shoot on VistaVision? Apparently it's because you can get these, the format allows you to get quite nice wide shots that don't have much distortion in them. So if you're shooting Brutalist architecture, you don't want your lines to kind of look distorted or wobbly. You want everything to be absolutely square and straight. So VistaVision is the best format for getting those kind of visuals. So they chose it because it would represent Brutalist architecture the best. So yeah, I love that.
Yes, it all does fit together quite well. And VistaVision, it does look beautiful, even if perhaps not as great in 70mm as we would have hoped. But
listen, we're going down the granular James Brailsford rabbit hole here. I can only apologise. What can I say? I am what I am.
For your lay viewer like myself, I wouldn't have noticed. But I think definitely see it in the cinema. Guys, take the opportunity. Go see it while it's still there. It is worth it. And actually, we can joke about the 3.5 hour runtime, but honestly, it doesn't feel that long.
It's 3.25, isn't it?
No, it's 3.5 hours. It's 3.5.
Is it 3.5? Oh,
well,
God, I thought it was 3.25.
Okay, I'm looking it up. The Brutalist runtime. 3 hours and 35 minutes, James. It's even longer.
I stand
it's
completely
even worse than
corrected.
I thought.
Jesus. I was thinking, like, let's not scare the audience off. Let's make sure we're as accurate as possible. No, it's even longer.
It is, but
there is a 15-minute break,
but
though.
that intermission is fine. It really, honestly. Yeah. Though I will say, the first really time helps. I watched it, a couple left after the first 10 minutes. Like, after that amazing opening scene, they left, and I was like, were they literally just here to check who was starring in the film or something? What's happened? Why would you go?
There was a guy watching it in front of me. He left about half an hour before the end of the film. I was like, wow, you made it this far? And then he was just like, no more.
I've done it. I've given it all I can give. I mean, fair enough. I can understand that, honestly, but no, guys, it's definitely worth seeing. It's something different, but love Anora. Happy Anora's won the Oscar, and I'm excited for you guys to hear our thoughts on that next week.
Absolutely. And are you looking forward to the second VistaVision film of 2025, Lily?
Oh my God, what is that?
Paul Thomas Anderson's new film. It's shot in VistaVision.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Cannot wait.
So starring Leonardo DiCaprio.
Ugh.
Oh no. It was a high followed by a low.
Oh, such a high and then such a low. Like,
oh no,
Paul, PTA, why?
Okay, it's based on another Pynchon novel, because he did Inherent Vice, which is based on Thomas Pynchon, and this is another Thomas Pynchon adaptation.
Okay, well, do you know when it's coming out, roughly?
It's been fucked around in the schedules by Warner Brothers. Late summer, I think.
Okay, fine. All right, guys. Well, we'll bring you our thoughts on that for sure, because I love Paul Thomas Anderson. But my God, leave Leonardo DiCaprio alone. I'm sick of his face. No offense, Leo. If you want to come on the podcast, we'd be honoured to have you. All right. Well, yet another tangent, but thank you guys for listening to another episode of Groovy Movies.
Absolutely. We appreciate everybody who listens, and remember, your favourite podcasters will really appreciate a like or a review. It really helps everyone out.
And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Groovy Movies is produced and edited by us, Lily Austin and James Brailsford. And James also produced the theme music.
Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Groovy Movies Pod, or email us groovymoviespod@gmail.com.
For more information about the films discussed, check out the show notes.